justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding. We then, unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that, we having thy fair always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Forte, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Terreland, Ms. Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert-Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henry Kitts, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Miss Morrison, Miss Nita, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright.
Statements by ministers. House Leader. Statements by ministers. None. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Annual report on audited financial statements of the Port Authority of Jamaica for the year 2017-2018. Annual report on audited financial statement of the Jamaica Mortgage Bank for the 2019-2020 year. Annual report on audited financial statement of the Jamaica International Free Zone Development Company Limited for the years 2016-2017 and 2017-2018. At a later stage, we'll recommit an announcement to table an order and a report under the Judiciary Salaries Act.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Constitution Amendment Impeachment Act 2021.
Chuck? Oh, Dr.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I now move to introduce and I have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Amendment Act 2021.
A bill shortly entitled the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Amendment Act 2021, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, my intention to debate about today's first reading of the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Amendment Bill 2021 signify another critical step in strengthening our legislative framework for national security. I've been around for some time. The amendments to the Act will specify additional offences in which criminal organizations are engaged in order to fund their activities, increase the numbers of offences under the Act, expand the list of aggravating factors to be considered when sentencing an individual convicted of certain offences under the Act, improve the trial procedure in order to protect the identity of witnesses for connected matters, a most critical element in this. Of course, members of the Honour House will need to recall that a Joint Select Committee of Members of Parliament was convened, commenced work in October 2018. Its report was tabled and approved by the House of Representatives in 2020. Of course, I cannot fail to comment here, Madam Speaker, that this kind of work takes an unduly long process, and whatever needs to be changed to ensure we can proceed more speedily in bringing, necessary legislation to the House need to be done. Deliberation and consultation of the Joint Select Committee were comprehensive and engaged a broad set of stakeholders. Following the tabling of the report, the Ministry undertook the complex process of distilling and incorporating the recommendations in order to develop the bill being tabled today. Of necessity, legislation sometimes is long and arduous. Unfortunately, that is the reality we face. While it is not my intention to debate the bill today, Madam Speaker, it is imperative that I underscore the game-changing nature of the bill, which will provide an additional legislative tool to the security forces. The bill is an assault on criminal gangs and a reminder of the people of Jamaica that this government is and will continue to put in place all necessary measures to undermine the work of criminals and make our society safe. And I commend that we have had the full support of the other side in working through this bill, but gangs and guns remain the principal cause of violence in our society and strengthens the criminal elements which we have to undermine and disrupt. I look forward to a timely debate on the bill, and I beg to give notice of second reading. Madam.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, I ask that at this point we begin the sectoral debate. And our first speaker is the Honorable Fayval Williams, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, and she will be followed by Mrs. Marlene Malahoo Forte, Attorney General. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister Williams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Curtis.
Madam Speaker, were it not for the people of St. Andrew Eastern, I would not be standing here in this honorable house today. So let me say thank you to everyone who voted to send me back to Parliament for a second term. Thank you for your understanding as I continue in the portfolio of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. It is a big job. It's a 24/7 job. Just ask my security and administrative staff. I want to put on record my deepest appreciation to my family, who barely see me, for their support and patience, to the Prime Minister for his trust and confidence to allow me to lead such an important ministry, whose output, which we know as student achievement, determines whether this Jamaican economy continues at historically low growth rates or whether it takes a giant leap forward. To the executive team, senior managers and staff at the Central Ministry, across its 7 regions or many agencies, teachers, principals, support staff, from early childhood to tertiary, I thank you for your tireless effort. Many of you go well beyond the call of duty. You wake up early and you go to bed late. And for many of you, this is a passion, and you want to see the education sector succeed. We recognize as well the efforts and funding of local and international partners in the education sector. Over the years, entities like UNESCO, USAID, IDB, UNICEF, and the World Bank, whose research forms a large part of this presentation this afternoon. You understand that if education succeeds, Jamaica succeeds. Every day, Madam Speaker, I'm moved to continue serving and leading the education sector. Madam Speaker, I know there are some pressing issues, such as the need for face-to-face to do exams, deadlines for school-based assessment, and a host of questions. We've organized a virtual town hall for tomorrow, Thursday, April 29 at 6 p.m., to deal with all those questions which are best dealt with in a town hall setting. Madam Speaker, I could not do all that I do without the unwavering support of Honorable Robert Nesta Morgan and his dogged determination to have a world-class child protection sector for the vulnerable children who fall into the safety net of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. His energy is matched only by the young people with whom he interacts as he carries out the policy mandates of the Children and Youth Divisions. I thank you, Honorable Minister. Madam Speaker, we have a kinship like no other. Starting with the information portfolio, our goal is to see the full implementation of the digital switchover from analog free-to-air television to fully digital free-to-air television. Approximately 83.7% of Jamaicans still use analog free-to-air television service with very limited channel choices. Fully digital free-to-air television services will significantly improve the number of channels, thus allowing Jamaicans wider access to information. We have begun the process to transition and expect that by 2023, the process will be completed. For the Children and Youth Division, Madam Speaker, the Joint Select Committee to look at various sexual offenses as well as the Child Care and Protection Act was approved on the 5th day of November 2019. It was subsequently debated and approved in the Senate on the 10th day of July last year. A cabinet submission has since been written and will be submitted in short order to ensure that as soon as possible we can enact amendments to the Child Care and Protection Act. Since being brought into effect in 1958, the Children Adoption of Act has not been subjected to a comprehensive process of being reviewed and updated. There's a need for a substantive revision and reformulation of adoption legislation that will address the evolving needs of modern Jamaican society. I can announce that the ministry is currently in the process of drafting a robust adoption policy with the expectation that this policy and draft Adoption Act will be tabled in the next fiscal year. With regards to Section 24 Child Care and Protection Act, on the instruction of Cabinet, we have drafted an urgent submission to amend the Child Care and Protection Act 2004 to remove an aspect of Section 24 under which a court may make a correctional order in respect of a child brought before the court. This will be repealed and replaced with an option for the court to make a therapeutic order. This is an important development as it will finally end the practice of labeling our children uncontrollable and placing them in penal institutions without charge. Madam Speaker, as part of the reforms of the child protection ecosystem, we have received approval from the Office of Utilities Regulation to activate 211 as a singular helpline for children at risk or for anyone who wishes to report child abuse. This helpline will be manned 24 hours by child care professionals and will be a significant addition to the child protection ecosystem. We will be launching the 211 number during this year's Child Month in May, and a further announcement will be made on the technical aspects of this important initiative. The CPFSA is the safety net when all other safety nets in the home, in the communities, and other institutions have failed. The CPFSA oversees foster care, adoption, state care, and residential facilities. In its most recent annual report, I'm very sad to say the agency reported 12,604 cases of abuse to our children. That is 1 in every 40 children. Looked at another way, the figures are telling us that 1 child in every class across Jamaica is in need of the services of the CPFSA. Madam Speaker, I've never witnessed so much pain and suffering on our children as I've seen in the 7 months since I've been at the ministry. What we read about or see on the news or hear on the radio is only the tip of the iceberg. I've seen or read cases of suicide, drowning, beating, buggery, and mutilation. There's clearly a need for a whole of Jamaica approach to caring for our children. Madam Speaker, there's an urgent need for social intervention and psychosocial support for many of our parents, guardians, and caregivers. And so we have been working on developing a good parenting campaign. Madam Speaker, the issue of parenting is a sensitive one. The reality is that there is no manual that comes with our children when they're born. It is the duty of government to assist our families when they are in need and give them the support to ensure that this important thread in the fabric of society remains strong and cohesive. We intend to scale up the work of the National Parenting Support Commission to impact more families. Most important, we must get better at recognizing the signs that something is about to go wrong in the life of a child before it actually goes wrong. Right now, the CPFSA depends on reports of cases of abuse or neglect in order to activate the team. This is too late, and so that's why we are already working on some strategies that will allow us to get data to create an early warning signal to alert us when something has started to go wrong in the lives of our children. I will speak some more on this as we develop it. The capabilities of the electronic platform for case management at CPFSA must be extended to other entities such as the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the point of first contact for cases of abuse. Center for Investigation of Sexual Offenses and Child Abuse, the SOCA, should be added to this case management platform as well, so that we can move quickly to triangulate cases of abuse and take swifter actions to rescue our children from distress. We will ensure that the various interministerial task force on children have timely information so that we can fully integrate our efforts. Madam Speaker, our focus going forward is to also complete the legislative work to ensure that abandoned babies spend less time in government facilities and more time with families who will properly care for them in the way they need to be cared for. We're addressing the legislation to prevent our children from languishing in jails and instead are put in appropriate institutions or residential care. Madam Speaker, some of the cases of abuse that CPFSA sees have elements of corporal punishment. Despite the position of the government being the prohibition of corporal punishment, it remains an all too common method of punishment within the home. The data from the Jamaica Survey of Living Conditions show that corporal punishment is the most used method across urban and rural, across age groups, across poor people and rich people, and it is used on both boys and girls. Children in the corporate area are more likely to be exposed to corporal or psychologically aggressive methods of punishment than children in rural areas. The top 3 corporal punishment methods are slapping, beating with an implement, and pinching. With respect to slapping, 69.1% of boys and 65.4% of girls were likely to be slapped. Boys are 2 times more likely to be beaten with an implement than girls. Some parents or guardians even go further with psychologically aggressive methods, quarreling and shouting, denying food, swearing, cursing. I want to say to our parents, I know that there are challenges with raising children, but those challenges pale in comparison to the irreparable physical and emotional damage that corporal punishment causes. Additionally, our children in the corporate area witness too much violence in the community and in their homes. Through a relentless good parenting campaign, we want to change the deeply embedded culture of corporal punishment of our children towards more positive, alternative forms of discipline that include removing privileges, time out, talking about why the action was wrong, and reasoning. Yes, reasoning. Little people, meaning our children, know how to reason and can reason. Hashtag stop corporal punishment. Madam Speaker, I turn now to education, the elephant in the room. Madam Speaker, based on government's investment in the education sector over the years, Jamaica's public schools should be ranked among the best in the world in terms of students' achievement. Yes, I know the education sector has had to pivot to the online space recently due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and there has been learning loss because not all of our students have been able to consistently connect to the virtual classroom. Yet, even while the country has seen a significant budget, the budget for the education sector remained. For this fiscal year, the budget for the education sector is $114.5 billion, plus an additional $2.8 billion for child protection as administered by CPFSA, for a total of $117.3 billion. This puts the budget of the education sector second only to that of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, which has a large budget because of debt amortization and interest payment. Madam Speaker, maintaining the spending in education is no easy feat, especially in these COVID times. It shows the commitment of the Minister of Finance and the Public Service to education. It shows the commitment of the Prime Minister to education. It shows the commitment of the Cabinet of Jamaica to education. It shows the commitment of this government to education. Madam Speaker, a recent World Bank study shows that Jamaica's education spending has been relatively high for a long time as a percent of GDP when compared to Caribbean small states. If you look at the chart, Jamaica is the blue line, Caribbean small states is the gray line. The World Bank study also shows that when compared with our regional peers on a country-by-country basis, and compared with countries that have education sectors that we admire, Jamaica compares favorably in its spend on education as a share of GDP and as a share of its budget. Madam Speaker, if we take the comparison beyond the Caribbean region and look internationally, our expenditure is within international norms and higher than most regional peers. If you look at the chart, Jamaica is the red bar. On the left, it's government expenditure as a share of GDP. On the right is government expenditure on education as a share of total government expenditure. Looked at from another perspective, Madam Speaker, on a per-student basis, comparatively speaking, Jamaica's per-student expenditure as a share of this country's GDP is comparable. The chart breaks down into pre-primary education, which is age 6 to 8, or grades 1 to 3, primary education, grades 4 to 6, secondary education, and tertiary education. In primary, secondary, and tertiary education, we compare well when you measure us by government's per-student expenditure as a share of GDP. We lag behind Caribbean small states, Finland, and the OECD, but we're ahead of Estonia, a country with a very good pre-primary education system. The only area we lag in is when we look at pre-primary, and this merits some interrogation. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's expenditure on staff compensation is relatively high when you look at the composition of the budget in the education sector. 76% of the education budget is spent on all staff compensation, 22% on recurring expenditure other than staff compensation, and 2% on capital spending, that is our school buildings primarily. And I will come back to address capital spending in schools. On the right-hand side of the chart is the annual comparison for 2018 versus 2019. You will see that the composition remains about the same across those 2 years. When we drill down into staff compensation, Madam Speaker, most of the budget goes to deliver instruction, especially at primary and secondary levels. That's a good thing. The persons who deliver instruction are teachers. It's a good thing to have a high percentage of the education budget going towards delivering instruction. At the pre-primary level, the mix is different, 49 versus 51%, and this is being interrogated to help us understand the reasons. When we look at other measures, such as student-teacher ratio, we compare relatively well. Our student-teacher ratios, on average, are only slightly higher than that of comparator group of countries. In pre-primary, which is grades 1 to 3, on the left side of the chart, we're lower than Barbados, with Jamaica having 11 students to 1 teacher on average versus 16 students to 1 teacher in Barbados. We're not that far off when we look at primary education, grades 4 to 6, and secondary or high school. This is not to say that there aren't schools that might have 30 or 35 students in a class. These figures are average across the education sector. In teacher qualification, we're not doing badly either. We have a high percentage of trained university graduates, trained college graduates, and trained instructors, beginning in our early childhood sector and all the way through. We have 92% trained teachers in the government-run infant schools. The only place that we have a high level of untrained tertiary level graduates is in our polytechnic schools. I've asked for this to be interrogated as well. Madam Speaker, it's not just the government that spends on education. Households spend a lot as well. For every Jamaican dollar government spends on education, on a per-student basis, households add $1.50 at the primary level and 0.7 at the primary and secondary level. Household expenditure on education represented approximately 2.6% of GDP in 2017. Across the education sector, we have a national standards curriculum for the first time. The national standards curriculum that we now have in our public schools was designed, developed, piloted, and implemented during 2016 to 2018 at a cost of approximately $530 million. New areas that were added to the curriculum include civics as a discrete discipline at grades 4 to 9, entrepreneurship, Spanish at grades 4 to 6, technical and vocational areas at grades 1 to 3. The changes in existing areas happened in structured language arts and mathematics programs, science, history, geography, social studies, and so on. The National Standards Curriculum places a great emphasis on STEM methodologies with more activity-based problem solving and real-world issues. On textbooks, the government spends about $1 billion annually on educational resource and textbooks. This school year, for the first time, we introduced e-textbooks and bought licenses for 38,000 students. On school nutrition, the government spends approximately $6.3 billion annually on lunch to students in our schools, as well as the breakfast and snack that Nutrition Products Limited NPL delivers to schools. During the pandemic, funds are paid directly to parents for lunch to be provided for their children. For devices and connectivity, the budget for fiscal year 21-22 is $757.7 million. By the time we end this school year, we will have handed over 125,000 tablets and laptops, the highest ever, to our students to allow them to access education in the virtual space. For the fiscal year 2020-2021 that just ended, the ministry spent approximately $2 billion on devices and connectivity. Let me pause to say thank you to all our sponsors in the One Tablet or Laptop per Child initiative. The One Tablet or Laptop per Child initiative continues. We will not stop until all our children have a device in their hand. So, Madam Speaker, based on these investments that I've highlighted, Jamaica's public schools should be ranked among the best in the world. The inputs are there without a doubt. What are we missing? Asked another way, Madam Speaker, what are we missing that's preventing us from having high student achievement across the board in our public schools? Number one, accountability is missing. Heavy-duty character education is missing. System-wide teacher effectiveness in the classroom is missing. Continuous teacher in-service professional and personal development is missing. Good old-fashioned time or hours teachers spend teaching and students spend learning is missing. Accountability for student absenteeism and dropout. And an objective teacher appraisal system is missing. Madam Speaker, let me start with accountability. Being accountable not only means being responsible for something, but also ultimately being answerable for your actions. The output from the public education sector is student achievement. The public education sector has not been doing a good job at producing high student achievement. Yes, there are some schools that have commendable student achievement. We applaud those schools. Madam Speaker, if Jamaica's economy is to move forward from decades of low economic growth, we need all our public schools to be graduating students with high achievement in the various subject areas, not just some of our schools. We also need to be producing students with not only high academic achievements, but students who are well-mannered individuals that give the proper respect to other people. Students who are taught ethics and honesty and responsibility and accountability and good moral values that people in a society should have that make them upstanding citizens. We should be graduating students with robust moral compasses. Madam Speaker, character education will become a part of the curriculum in our schools, as it will greatly help with academics by teaching students a sense of diligence. Students will learn how to focus on their studies and have the drive to do well. Character education will teach students how to interact properly with their teachers and other students in and out of the classroom. And because our students spend quite some time in school, school is the perfect place to teach character education. And yes, there will be exams for character education to show the importance being placed on it. One teacher resource site said that research done on character education found that schools that have character education as part of their curriculum have fewer incidences of disciplinary referrals, suspensions, and truancy. The positive environment that it brought to schools also increased attendance and has also brought about a significant improvement in academic performance of students. What our children will learn from teaching them character education will be useful to them as they engage and interact with other people in society. For our students to become upstanding members of their communities, our students need to know the proper way to treat other people. And these are the things that they can learn and understand through character education. Madam Speaker, we will design, develop, and implement the curriculum for character education, and we will give it the same importance we give to literacy and numeracy. Dr. Herbert Gale, in his book, Males and Tertiary Education in Jamaica, said, education is not only about preparation for a labor market, but it's also equally important for character development and social participation. He goes on to say that school is a site for transmission of values and norms of society. In educating our children about their character, we want to teach them about their rights and duties as citizens, what it means to be a Jamaican. We want to teach them about a culture of peace. We want to educate them on tolerance and the development of intra- and inter-community social partnerships. Madam Speaker, good citizens are not born, they're taught. Good character isn't given at birth. We must deliberately and actively teach our students the ways in which one develops good character. To support character education, we will restore to prominence the uniformed groups, cadets, scouts, Red Cross, 4-H Rangers, among others in our schools. The ministry recently conducted an audit of uniform groups in schools to determine the areas of greatest needs and the type of support that will be required. We currently have 635 uniform groups in schools. They need to be actually in each of the 1,000 schools. Character education will be institutionalized in all our schools. Let me speak more on the issue of accountability, Madam Speaker. An open discussion on accountability will bring us to a place where schools are performing better and our children are learning more. First, though, we must not confuse accountability with blame. Accountability is not the same thing as blame or punishment. Blame is focused on the past and on punishing the offender. To be accountable means to take responsibility for results, good or bad. It means finding solutions to problems and applying lessons learned in order to improve future results. Being accountable is constructive because it focuses on the future. Madam Speaker, in the pursuit of education, there are many factors that determine student achievement, starting with parents or the home, the school, the principal, peers, the teachers, the Ministry of Education, the student, and I'm sure there are a host of other factors that I can list, more than I can list here. As you can imagine, there are many, many studies that have been done to determine of the many factors which ones are the most important in determining student achievement. Madam Speakers, of the many studies I've read, the two factors that keep recurring as the most important factors that determine student achievement are the teachers and the student. Why the teachers? A child's major part of the day is spent in a classroom. The average Jamaican student spends 11.4 years in pre-primary, primary, and secondary school by the time they're 18 years old. That is 63% of their life that they spend with teachers. And if I were to assign a percentage of the accountability pie to teachers, I would assign 30%, the student would be 50%, and the remaining 20% would be shared among parents, the principal, the schools, peers, Ministry of Education, and others. Why 50% of accountability to the student? The student is the one who has to wake up and be present at school, virtually or face-to-face. There's nobody else that can go to school for the student, not the student's parents or aunt or friend, nobody else but the student. The student is accountable to show up prepared. Nobody else can show up prepared except the students. If the students are not present, there's no school, and so the student has the greatest accountability in the pursuit of his or her education. We need to get this message to our students. I'm well aware that there are many students who are super accountable, but the bulk of our students really need to own accountability for achievement. Yes, I know that many students have hurdles in their way. Many things hold them back sometimes. However, that does not negate the fact that students have the biggest stake in their academic success. They're most accountable for their achievements. I'll speak to some of those hurdles that hold students back and what we're doing about them. So at the end of the day, it's the teacher and the student. Study after study confirms that teachers make a difference. They are the most important factor affecting student learning. So if the teacher and the student are the two most dominant factors in student achievement, what is it that they're doing or not doing to limit student achievement? The World Bank study offers some insight. Their study found that the quality of education is a key challenge of the Jamaican education system. In 2020, they looked at the learning adjusted years of school and found that a child in Jamaica can expect to complete 11.4 years of pre-primary, primary, and secondary school by age 18. However, when years of schooling are adjusted for quality of learning, this is about equivalent to 7.1 years, a learning gap of 4.3 years. This puts us among countries with low human capital development. Madam Speaker, education matters. How do we catch up from that learning gap of 4.3 years plus the learning loss as a result of COVID-19? We catch up by having a relentless focus on teacher effectiveness in the classrooms, virtual or physical. Teachers have to spend more time teaching and students have to spend more time learning. That may sound simple, not if you understand what a principal of a very large secondary school told me. He said, that on average Jamaican teachers spend 16 minutes of the 40-minute class section attempting to establish order, maintain silence, enforce discipline, or attending to administrative concerns. That's 40% of the class time gone. Multiply this by 1,000 schools and the hundreds of classes on a daily basis, and you will understand the magnitude of time lost and wasted. A World Bank study was even more alarming. It said observational data showed that teachers in Jamaica spend the equivalent of 2 out of 5 days per week off task or on classroom management, and that of the remaining 3 days, the entire class is engaged for only the equivalent of 1 day. I've tasked the ministry to take steps to understand what are the off-task and classroom management matters that are subtracting from the precious time teachers have to teach in the classroom, and work to reduce or eliminate those time-wasting activities so teachers can focus on teaching. In addition to identify where we're losing time and taking steps to gain it back, when we resume normal operations in our school, we will launch a government-sponsored extra lesson program to provide more teaching and learning opportunities for our children, especially those from economically disadvantaged homes. Extra lessons have been a feature of the Jamaican education landscape for a very long time, and with good reason. Parents recognize that their children need way more hours of teaching time to keep up or get ahead. However, given the cost of extra lessons, only parents with means can afford extra lessons. Yet children from economically disadvantaged homes need extra lessons more. The ministry will launch the after-school extra lesson program. Of significance, this program will be available to parents who want to learn more so that they can help their children, or they want to complete the high school they never finished. The details of the plan are being fleshed out. Madam Speaker, time lost, time wasted in school is subtle. It is silent. Many people don't see it as a big deal, and therefore we don't do anything about it. It is a big deal, especially in a context of learning gap of 4.3 years. We have to raise awareness of this among teachers, students, parents, and the society at large. The ministry is demanding of schools that schools treat class time as sacrosanct. We're demanding that all of Jamaica respect the sacredness of the classroom time, whether it is in the face-to-face mode or virtual. All those activities schools love to do during class time, I say to them, please find non-class time to do these activities. On the road to improve teacher effectiveness in the classroom, we have to transition from the generalist teaching model in primary schools. Currently, one teacher teaches all subject areas in a class. So the one teacher teaches maths, reading, writing, language arts, social studies, science, drama, art, religious education, civics, resource and technology, physical education, music, Spanish, among other subjects. Among the many inspection indicators that the National Education Inspectorate assesses, there's one that measures how effectively teaching supports the students' learning. In the NEI latest report, there are 202 primary schools that are ranked unsatisfactory and 2 that are ranked in need of immediate support in teacher effectiveness. We will begin the transition of having specialist teachers in our worst performing primary school as identified by the National Education Inspectorate. Madam Speaker, successful teachers have many traits, but the most important is that they're masters of their subject. We have a small pool of master teachers available to classroom teachers. They can rove virtually now that we have the technology. We need to create the schedule and iron out the logistics. This master teacher concept exists currently, but the ministry has been tepid or lukewarm in its implementation. We have to scale up. So we must deploy it across the education system with urgency and make it sustainable. This is another strategy to increase teacher effectiveness and student learning in the classroom. Another strategy for teacher effectiveness is to raise the level of in-service professional growth and professional development. The Jamaica Teaching Council was established in 2008, 13 years ago, as a part of the education transformation strategy to improve the quality and coverage of education, but amazingly to date it lacks the necessary legislation. Its purpose is to recognize and promote teaching as a profession, to continue to improve the quality of teaching and learning in Jamaica by regulating the entry and standing of members of the teaching profession, to establish and maintain the registers of the teachers and role of instructors, to establish and maintain professional standards for teacher competence and practice, to regulate the professional conduct of teachers to ensure in the public interest that teachers are fit and proper persons to teach, to create an enabling environment for the continuing professional development of teachers. This bill has a high priority on my list of priorities. I can announce that the draft bill was sent to the Attorney General's office 2 days ago. Madam Speaker, another strategy to recover from the learning gap and move ahead is a broad-based implementation of the revised teacher appraisal model. The difference between this one and the past one is that this one is standards-based. It demands evidence of performance and is aligned to the national standards curriculum. Every 2 years, the teacher appraisal model will be assessed for its effectiveness as an indicator of professional practice and amended accordingly. The teacher appraisal model is not for punitive purposes, but for a powerful point of reflection, support, and growth. Using measures of teacher effectiveness to help teachers grow as well as assess them is the first of many ways to improve and support our teachers. The Jamaica Teaching Council has been assiduously working on this and expects that all points will be settled by the end of April 2021. Additionally, the National Education Inspectorate, in its last annual report, recommended as a way to increase teacher effectiveness the development of a National Teacher Competency Index that will inform the Ministry and the government of the existing teacher competencies. This will inform the national training plans so that it can be targeted on the national needs. The index should be standard-based and publishable. The NEI also recommended that all teachers should be teachers of reading, and therefore it should be a mandatory subject in college training, in teachers training colleges program. We will get that done. Madam Speaker, many teachers spend a lot of time, a lot of hours writing lesson plans. We know all too often the late Sunday nights getting ready for the school week. Given the technology we now have for our teachers, it is time to use the technology to promote efficiency and collaboration by creating an online repository of lesson plans for our teachers. The platform will be easy to use. Lesson plans will be organized by subject and grade level. Within each lesson plan, you will find clear objectives, description of materials needed, a thorough procedure with an opening and a closing, as well as assessments and modifications. Teachers can download and tailor the lesson plans to fit the needs of the student. Also, if teachers have lesson plans that they think are excellent, they can upload and share them with other teachers. We expect that the central repository of lesson plans will promote collaboration among teachers all across the education sector, and that by providing this tool for our teachers, it will enable teachers to focus more of their time on the ever-important demands of classroom management and student-teacher relationship. Madam Speaker, another strategy to recover from the learning gap and get ahead is to focus on our boys. Here again, I reference Dr. Herbert Gale and Pisha Bryan's book, Males and Tertiary Education in Jamaica. Dr. Gale highlighted a UNICEF study that spoke to the neglect of boys in Jamaica. Boys tend to have a different learning style in some of our schools. There are principals who've been having good results focusing on teaching boys in certain subjects, such as mathematics, and in certain grades, such as grades 7 to 9, thanks to the training being provided by the National College for Educational Leadership, NCEL. Interestingly, the principals have found that the boys really pick up the pace when there is this particular focus on them. I know that gender-based teaching and learning is not very popular in international circles. However, we are in a crisis in education in Jamaica, made worse by the pandemic, and we have to try many different things that will get our boys learning. Many of our boys need environment that support practical application of what they are learning. Let me say as well, we also need more men in the classrooms at all levels of the education sector.
Madam Speaker, I ask, how much time do you need? Another 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the member be allowed an additional 20 minutes to complete her presentation. Thank you.
The question before the House is that the member be allowed 20 minutes more to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me say as well, we also need more men in the classroom at all levels of the education sector. We're putting our heads together with the Jamaica University Colleges, Dr. Ashburn Pinnock, to see how we can craft programs to attract men into the teaching profession. And I want to say to the men, the young boys need you in the classroom. Madam Speaker, absenteeism is a major cause of students' lost time. The national average for full school attendance is only 74.6%. The 4 primary reasons for absenteeism, according to the Jamaica Survey of Living Condition, are illness, money problem, school closed, and rain. Regarding illness, in the poorest segment of the population, of the children who are absent from school, 38.5% cited illness as the main cause for non-attendance. In the richest segment of the population, of the children who are absent from school, 57% cited illness. Nationally, of the children who are absent from school, 43.1% of our children cite illness as a reason for being absent from school. I was very alarmed by the statistics. It is quite high. I took a look at the health section of the Jamaica Survey of Living Condition. The data show that a high percentage of our children have at least one chronic illness. That primary chronic illness is asthma. The incidence of this chronic illness, asthma, is 1.5 times what you find in the general Jamaican population. Asthma is a real problem among our students, causing them to lose valuable time from school. None of the other chronic illnesses come close. The incidence of asthma in children is 5 times to 10 times that of these other chronic illnesses. Asthma is 1.5 times more likely to be prevalent in boys than in girls. Based on the statistics, the problem exists in the corporate area as well as in rural. We must bring some urgent attention to this health problem among our children. Madam Speaker, in the early childhood sector, an important feature is the Jamaica School Readiness Assessment, which is designed to assess school readiness of 4-year-old Jamaican children in the areas of general development, academic performance, and behavior. The early learning measure focuses on early literary skills and early numeracy skills. The result of this tool, which was developed by Professor Sam Vaughan, offers some insight into the prevalence of developmental disability. Some 33,000 children, or 85.9% of 4-year-olds in schools, had assessment completed. Of these, almost 1/3 of children were identified as having at least one developmental problem. The most common developmental problem identified were in understanding, 13.8%, and learning, 12.9%. We wholeheartedly support this readiness assessment and will ensure that it is institutionalized because it gives us early signs about our children starting at age 4. And once we get that information, we can take the necessary action. The results of the readiness assessment support the modernization of the early childhood sector, in which government makes available more government-run early childhood institutions with trained practitioners. Currently, the government infant schools only account for about 18% of the early childhood sector. We must continue the rollout of the brain builders and the early stimulation programs. There are 107 early childhood institutions that have been assessed as ready to be transitioned to government infant schools. We will get this done. We will also intensify the in-service training of our early childhood practitioners to expand their understanding of the value of play and friendly teacher interaction for children of this age. We have to scale these up so that our children are ready when they get to primary school. Turning now to post-secondary, which is sixth form, or grades 12 and 13, and tertiary. Madam Speaker, most of this presentation has been focused on pre-primary, primary, and secondary schools, and with good reason. If we don't fix the problems there, then we will have no hope of expanding tertiary. This expansion hinges on the strategies I've outlined, which include ratcheting up teacher effectiveness in primary and secondary schools. At the post-secondary level, to encourage more students to enroll and stay in school until age 18, we have to create viable sixth form options. We have the traditional pathway, which is CAPE. It is long-standing and respected. Outside of sixth form CAPE, students generally have to find their own way to HEART, NSTA, or community colleges or other programs that offer certificates, diplomas, or associate degree. These are all good. In addition to all of those, the ministry plans to institutionalize the Career Advancement Program as a sixth form program with the requisite rigor of exams. This is supported by a review of recent CSEC results, which show a high percentage of boys attaining passes at levels 1 to 3 in the technical and vocational areas compared to the non-TVET areas. In higher education, for tertiary, in a bid to increase quality assurance and monitoring of higher education institutions, Cabinet recently granted approval for the development of the National Higher Education Policy to govern the higher education sector. The policy will provide a framework which should streamline that sector to work in a cohesive and efficient manner. In addition, a new funding model linking national goals and imperatives such as research and labor market requirements is to be developed through this Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. Madam Speaker, I turn now to schools infrastructure. The infrastructure of our schools is in need of investments, and not just the buildings. Planning for school infrastructure going forward has to include adequate water and sewage infrastructure, minimum bandwidth connectivity, technology in classrooms, adequate electricity with an emphasis on renewable energy and in line with the technology requirements. Additionally, for new schools, we must give consideration for boarding facilities so parents have an option to expose their children to different environments. Looking at the current school infrastructure, 17% of schools have enrollment that exceed 20% of capacity. Additionally, shifts by school type shows that 5% of students in our all-age schools, 11% in primary schools, and 18% in secondary or high schools are impacted by still having shift schools. Additionally, the World Bank and UTEC did technical inspections of all our schools' infrastructure in an effort to categorize them based on their level of resilience. The data showed that 440 of our schools are rated as being in danger zone for landslide and flooding. We will not ignore this data. Madam Speaker, STEM education has become a national imperative. It's therefore important to note too the plans of the ministry towards providing an enabling school environment that will encourage students' interest in these areas. The government has initiated plans to create 6 STEM and 1 performing arts institution over the next 8 years. These are estimated to be US $132.5 million and were approved last Friday by the government's Public Investment Management Committee, PIMC, to seek entry into the Public Sector Investment Program, PSIP, for implementation. Madam Speaker, we have to move expeditiously to digitize all our processes all across the education sector to improve our efficiency and effectiveness. Too many of our processes at the ministry are archaic or manual in nature. So this year we'll see the full implementation of My HR Plus, the HR payroll and pension management system. The efficiency gains will be enormous. We plan to also implement a robust education management information system, EMIS. This was also taken to PIMC along with the STEM schools last Friday. It will give us a digitized financial management system for all schools, a digitized attendance reporting platform, a digitized teacher substitution platform to make it easy to find replacement teachers in the case of absence, a digitized platform to support the reimbursement of funds for the renewal of police records and food handlers permit for early childhood practitioners, a digitized platform to manage school infrastructure and maintenance service. In regards to the legislative agenda for education, the focus is on the Jamaica Teaching Council Bill, amendments to the Education Act and regulations, and the Higher Education Bill. Madam Speaker, in summary, there are no shortcuts to high student achievement. We cannot inherit high student achievement. We can only develop it through sustained effort and investment. A culture of education is created by what we do. Yes, time matters. Learning takes time. All other things being equal, countries where students get more school hours with time on task are countries where students tend to learn more. Alongside the refocusing of the ministry, we have to convince many of our fellow Jamaicans to make choices that value education more than other things as part of the equation. So, Madam Speaker, let me summarize the priority actions to boost teacher effectiveness, which will lead to high student achievement. In the early childhood institutions, institutionalize the use of assessment screening tools that are valid, reliable, and demonstrate diagnostic accuracy for predicting learning problems. They will allow us to take the necessary corrective action. Scale up the Brain Builder programs and early stimulation in the early childhood institution. Accelerate the number of government-sponsored early childhood institutions. 102 basic schools are assessed as ready to transition. We will transition them. Expand the early childhood practitioners' understanding of play and interaction with children of that age group. At our primary and secondary institutions, create more time for education overall across the system. When we return to the face-to-face mode, we will launch the government-sponsored extra lesson classes. The more time students spend learning, the more students learn. Engage the students online during the summers in coding and other subjects, and currently we're piloting coding program with some of our primary and high school students. Increase teacher effectiveness in the classroom, and there are a number of ways to do this. Transition the unsatisfactory and in need of urgent attention primary schools from the generalist model to having specialist teachers. Leverage the master teacher concept in secondary school by using technology. I was advised yesterday that UNESCO has indicated it will support training of master teachers. Develop and implement an electronic lesson plan repository to help boost teacher effectiveness. Provide ongoing and sustained in-service development of teachers both professionally and personally. Institute a robust teacher appraisal and the National Teacher Competency Index as per the NEI. Teach boys separately from girls at selected grades in selected subjects where possible. We're in a crisis in education. We have to try different strategies. Enable our teachers to teach boys. Use early warning strategies to reduce absenteeism. Restore to prominence uniform groups in school. This will help to stem disciplinary problems. New schools being built must consider boarding options. We need to take children out of certain toxic environments. School time is sacrosanct, especially in our primary and secondary schools. We want to increase the awareness that school time is sacred and eliminate or reduce non-essential activities that rob teachers and students of precious class time. For post-secondary education, sixth form or grades 12 to 13, we will make grades 12 to 13 sixth form an attractive must-do for our students. Career Advancement Program, CAP, will be institutionalized in grades 12 and 13. Caribbean Military Academy will be a sixth form option. We will shortly implement a national school leaving certificate highlighting the student's accomplishment throughout his or her educational journey. And finally, in the category of life skills to be taught, an important must-have documents on graduating at grade 13. For good measure, those who remain on track to graduate at grade 13, the ministry will have a program to teach financial literacy, resulting in the grade 13 student having a bank account, a debit card, or an electronic wallet. The ministry will ensure the grade 13 student applies for and receives a passport. We live in an interconnected world. A passport is good to have. The ministry will ensure grade 13 students graduate with a copy of their birth certificate, a very important document to have. The ministry will provide driver's education classes to grade 13 students, leading to their getting their driver's license to help our graduating students learn proper road etiquette and safety. In time, this should positively improve the driving on our roads. Lastly, but very critical, teach character education in our schools from grade 1 to grade 13. Madam Speaker, our public schools can be ranked among the best in the world. We have to do the work relentlessly, day in, day out. There are no shortcuts. This I do know. The wealth that lies hidden in the undeveloped skills of our population is far greater than what we can reap by extracting wealth from any of our natural resources. With the right focus, our education sector in Jamaica can break out of the cycle of poor student achievement in education. Let's get to work. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, for the 6th consecutive year, I rise to make my contribution to these sectoral debates as the Attorney General of Jamaica. However, Madam Speaker, I believe good order requires a suspension of the standing orders to enable me to speak during the allotted time. Madam Speaker, I take it as having been suspended.
Go ahead.
I reiterate what I pointed out in my maiden presentation back in 2016. The Office of Attorney General is not now a ministerial office. Although the Attorney General is in attendance at meetings of the Cabinet and the Solicitor General is in attendance at meetings of the Permanent Secretary's Board. In a subsequent presentation, Madam Speaker, I averred that by design, the framers of the Constitution intended the Office of Attorney General to rank at Cabinet level, with the option for the holder to be a member of the Cabinet, where also a member of either of the Houses of Parliament. I should point out in passing, for those who do not know, that within the Office of the Attorney General, the Solicitor General is the highest-ranking public servant, pursuant to the Civil Service Establishment Order. At the same time, Madam Speaker, it is noteworthy that the public service, as defined constitutionally, does not include service in the Office of Attorney General. We can see Section 1(6) of the Constitution. Remarkably, the office has been designated a professional one, and this does not reference its executive rank. It is arguable, therefore, that a holder of the office is de jure a backbencher, notwithstanding any privilege extended. And it also means, Madam Speaker, that there is no sharing of collective responsibility to Parliament for the general direction and control of the government in accordance with Section 69. But it wasn't me.
Definitely there is no collective responsibility.
There are, these, Madam Speaker, are important reminders. The Prime Minister doesn't really need it, but they're important reminders which keep me in track to avoid any temptation to get ahead of myself in discharging the functions of office. And so you can understand how grateful I am for the opportunity to make this contribution yet again. I really do not take it for granted, Madam Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, for the confidence he reposes in me to entrust me with this role of principal legal advisor to the government he heads. I thank the people of the constituency of St. James West Central, who returned me to this honourable house for the second term as their duly elected representative. I renew my commitment to them to be relentless in my advocacy and other efforts on their behalf to have the machinery of government realigned for better outcomes in their best interest. I also thank, Madam Speaker, my very faithful companions on this amazing journey who support me and keep me grounded. My family, especially my dear husband, as well as those friends I call family, my colleagues, the assigned CPOs, my constituency management and office teams, and the team at the Attorney General's chambers, led by the learned Solicitor General, Mrs. Marlene Aldred. Madam Speaker, it has been such an eventful journey. The challenges and opportunities of this past year in particular, with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, have compelled me to pause and reflect on the journey, to constantly rethink and reassess my approach to the exercise of leadership. Every day, I emerge with profound gratitude for the perspectives I have gained along the way, now that I am in my 4th term as a legislator, with experience from both houses of Parliament and on both sides of the aisles. Madam Speaker, I think back on the perspective gain. I have served in all three branches of government. I've served in academia, the media, and in volunteerism. I came to the legislative and executive branches in 2009, initially as a Senator and State Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, then as Opposition Senator, Senate Spokesman, and Shadow Minister of Health and Healthy Lifestyle. I transitioned to this Honourable House, first in 2016, and got re-elected last year. I was appointed the Attorney General in 2016, and thank you, Prime Minister, reappointed again in 2020. It has been approximately 2.5 decades of service and extraordinary learning across the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors. You know, Madam Speaker, although a chorus of cynics chanted and chided along the way, I constantly collected my thoughts and composed myself. Consequently, I have grown in so many ways, and I have gained a deep understanding of the inner workings of government. The role of an elected member of Parliament provides unique insights from multiple perspectives into the issues confronting the nation. The role of Attorney General cross-cuts all of government and provides its own unique insight from other multiple perspectives into not only the issues, but also the types of solutions that are required to make real progress on the problems. Performing both roles concurrently is like wearing bifocal lens, having one part that corrects for near vision and the other for distance vision. It really has proven to be more valuable than onlookers readily appreciate, notwithstanding the heavy workloads in both spheres. From the time I came to both offices and gained sufficient understanding of what they entail, I became firmly of the view that a job description, which clearly sets out the functions to be performed and the related competencies and a code of conduct were required for the office of Member of Parliament. The only clue we really have about what the MP ought properly be involved in comes from Section 48 of the Constitution, which sets out the power of Parliament to make laws for peace, order, and good government. The qualification and disqualification provisions at Sections 39 and 40 long need to be revised and updated, putting it mildly. At the same time, Madam Speaker, I acknowledge and recognize that parliamentary government cannot be explained solely in terms of legal and constitutional rules. It depends essentially upon the political base which underlies it, in particular on the party system around which political life is organized. Following a general election, it is the party with a majority of seats in the House of Representatives that forms government. A government is expected to carry out its election promises, since the party which wins a general election may be said to have mandate to implement its manifesto. This is an important context for us to appreciate in the work we do. You know, Madam Speaker, it is easy to criticize politicians and the role of the parties in public life. However, it is just not possible to imagine a democratic system of governance for a population of millions in which there is no political organization. Under our Westminster-style system, the electorate takes no direct part in the legislative decision-making, save by electing the House of Representatives. Nevertheless, by virtue of our Constitution, some constitutional amendments may only take effect if they are approved by referendum. Law, Madam Speaker, is not merely a matter of rules which govern relations between private individuals. Law also concerns the power and structure of the state. But law does not exist in a social or political vacuum. Within a stable democracy, laws are the product of human decisions. And this takes me to the Office of Attorney General. Madam Speaker, I am firmly of the view that its current structure is not fit for purpose. It should be appropriately resourced, should be an appropriately resourced department of government on its own. We should not have to refer over to another entity certain important decisions which directly impact the efficiency of the office in relation to its core functions. I'm only minimally appeased that in the process of re-centralization of legal services, some changes are being made. I now turn to highlights of the work of the chambers for the reporting period of April 2020 to March 2021. Madam Speaker, the work of the chambers is led and managed by me and the Learned Solicitor General, respectively, with an executive team across 6 divisions, 5 of which are legal and 1 administrative. With the onset of the pandemic, the chambers continue to deliver our services, represent our clients, implement protocols to protect our staff, and guide the rest of government to ensure best practices were complied with during the most challenging of circumstances. For this, I applaud the hard-working men and women of the chambers. They have still been able, to a great extent, provide timely legal representation and legal advice when called upon, and to do so at a high quality. We have also implemented protocols to counteract the effects of the pandemic, and adherence by staff has helped to a great extent to keep us safe while conducting the business of the government and indeed serving all persons in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, in addition to the paucity of resources, the major challenge we face in the chambers in the provision of appropriate legal representation and processing and delivery of legal advice is the lack of sufficient and timely instructions from our clients in the face of an extremely heavy workload. Furthermore, we often have to do the work of others, and we do it just to get it done. While I have seen some improvement, for instance, in the motor vehicle accident project work, government still has a long way to go in ordering its affairs for better outcomes. The lack of timely and sufficient instructions is particularly debilitating when we try to resolve issues in court. Because of what I see through the cases, Madam Speaker, I can say, regrettably, a lot of what is done in the civil service and the wider public service is not always in accordance with the law. Most times, the intervention of the chambers is sought after the fact with an expectation for miracles. While I have seen some improvements over time, government still has a long way to go in ordering its affairs for better outcomes. You know, Madam Speaker, I think what has driven home to me through these dual roles is that the place to spot a fault is where it occurs. The place to spot a fault is where it occurs. And so the place to solve a problem is where the problem exists. The Chambers is committed to continue to engage our clients and to guide them in how to undertake their public functions in a manner that will adhere to the rule of law. Madam Speaker, I now update the Honourable House on some important aspects of the centralisation of legal services. I am pleased to inform the Honourable House that the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has now approved the organisational structure for the centralisation of legal services. The chambers will operate as the headquarters with legal service units located inside the ministries. There is to be phased onboarding of all staff in the LSUs to the chambers in the coming months. We're working through some coordination issues which have arisen. We need to institute formal guidelines as well as clearly defined standards and processes to ensure consistency in the quality of legal work produced across ministries and departments. Since I came to office in 2016, we set about to build the capacity of our legal officers, not only in the chambers, but also in the ministries, through training and team-building interventions. A cadre of paralegal officers has also been created with the support of the Justice Training Institute, a department of the Ministry of Justice. The chambers as headquarters continues to be strengthened with the leadership and change management sessions for members of the executive committee, an overhauling and upgrading of the ITC system, new laptops, desktops for the staff, the creation of a knowledge repository to which all legal officers in headquarters and ministries have access, an organization review with a re-engineering of all business processes, as well as the development of new human resource management framework documents, including a human resource policies and procedure manual and competency profiles for all categories of staff. We have prepared the staff in headquarters and in the LSUs with the help of our appointed change ambassadors. The honourable ministers, Madam Speaker, have for a long time been pleading for more legal staff and for more paralegal support for senior legal officers. I'm very pleased to announce that all ministries will now have a properly established legal service unit, including paralegal and administrative support. No longer will a ministry be served by one legal officer, who in most cases has no dedicated paralegal or administrative support, as is now the case in some ministries. The cry was heard, and the recommendations and our proposals were developed after extensive consultations. And Madam Speaker, in this regard, I want to express my deep appreciation to my colleagues in the Cabinet, specifically the Prime Minister, Ministers Shock and Clark, for their support in getting these matters in place and bringing the necessary improvements in the provision of legal services in the Government of Jamaica. I also use the opportunity to thank our international partners, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, popularly called the World Bank, who along with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service have entrusted funding for our modernization initiatives. My appreciation also to the permanent secretaries, in particular, Mrs. Carol Palmer, Mrs. Sansia Bennett Templar, and now acting permanent secretary, Mrs. Grayson Stewart McFarlane, who along with the Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador the Honourable Douglas Saunders, have kept the centralization of legal services project as a priority item at the weekly meetings of the Permanent Secretaries Board. I also want to single out Miss Kayla Sewell-Wills, Miss Kayla Sewell-Mills, who has led the transition team for 3 years. She was loaned to us from the Cabinet Office. During her tenure as project lead, the objective has been achieved. Commendations are in order. Madam Speaker, I will now turn my focus to aspects of the legal work of the chambers for the period under review, and I will then follow up with other matters relating to human resource management and administration before I close my presentation. Madam Speaker, there are 5 legal divisions in the chambers, starting with the litigation division. This division handles a very large workload. During the period April 2020 to March 2021, the division received 398 additional files, and this is more than one for every single day of the year. Currently, The division is staffed with 16 attorneys and 8 secretaries, and is led by the very able and learned Deputy Solicitor General and Director of State Proceedings, Ms. Althea Jarrett, who really goes above and beyond the call of duty. Over the period, members of the division also continue to appear amicus curiae before the Court of Appeal in appeals in which the Attorney General is not named as a party, but where the court has invited us to make submissions on the constitutional issues that arise in the case. Litigation is the largest division in the chambers. Each attorney has in excess of 200 cases currently assigned. In excess of 200 cases. I thank not only DSG Jarrett, but the entire team who bear the brunt of the legal representation burden in the courts when all other forms of problem solving has failed. And you know, recently, 4 of our senior members of the litigation team were promoted to serve in judicial roles. While a clear recognition of the competence and capability of the attorneys in the chambers, it is a huge loss to us, Madam Speaker, and will impact how we're able to do the work. Recruitment is, however, ongoing, regrettably, due to many factors, including the level of emoluments, which is far below market value, and the massive workload. We're not able to attract the kind of attorneys that are needed for the senior posts. Madam Speaker, I will briefly just highlight some of the notable cases that we have handled in the division for the period. So, Everton Douglas and others against the Minister of National Security and others is a highly publicized case involving the challenge brought by 5 claimants who had been detained pursuant to several states of public emergency declared by His Excellency the Governor General. The challenges were by way of applications in the Supreme Court for writs of habeas corpus. I will not go into the details of the background to the claim, Madam Speaker, but suffice it to say that at the end of the day, the trial judge declared that the states of public emergency were unconstitutional, and we have appealed the decision and we have requested an expedited hearing. There is a matter of the Attorney General against Claude Clark, administratrix of the estate of Keith Clark. In February of this year, we argued the government's appeal of the full court decision. You may recall, Madam Speaker, that the full court found that the Minister of National Security's power to issue good faith certificates do not infringe the doctrine of separation of powers, but held that they were null and void and without effect as having been issued in circumstances that were manifestly unreasonable and unfair, given that they were signed 6 years after the incident and 4 years after the preferring of the voluntary bill of indictment. We are currently awaiting the decision of the Court of Appeal. Then there is the matter of Maurice Tomlinson against the Attorney General. And this matter is a constitutional challenge brought by the claimant in relation to the sexual offences created by sections 76, 77, and 79 of the Offences Against the Persons Act. These sections are popularly referred to as the Buggery laws. In March of this year, the court heard an application argued by us for the court to order the hearing of the preliminary issue on whether the constitutionality of these sections of the Offences Against the Persons Act can be inquired into by the court in light of the savings clause in section 13(2) of the Constitution. We are currently awaiting the decision of the learned trial judge on this application. There is also the matter of Cindy Robinson and Dr. Alfred Atkinson, Morant Bay Health Center, and the Attorney General of Jamaica. We continue to deal with cases relating to the omission on the part of a judge of the Supreme Court to deliver his judgment before retirement. And in this case, the learned judge heard a claim in 2010 in which the claimant sought damages for medical negligence. At the end of the trial, the learning judge reserved his judgment, but retired in 2015, having not delivered his decision. Consequently, in November 2019, the claimant brought a claim for breach of her constitutional rights, seeking various reliefs, to include a declaration that her right to a fair hearing within a reasonable time by an independent and impartial tribunal, by virtue guaranteed by Section 16(2) of the Constitution, had been breached. A declaration that a fair hearing can no longer be guaranteed to the claimant in her claim. Damages, including that sought in the substantive claim, special damages as claimed in the substantive claim, interest on damages, cost in the substantive claim, and cost in the constitutional claim. In particular, Madam Speaker, the claimant asked the court to award her $24 million in general damages and over $1.3 million in special damages. In all good conscience, we had no choice but to concede that the claimant's right to a fair trial was breached, and in particular, the reasonable time guarantee. However, we contended that a retrial was the appropriate remedy and not an award of damages on the substantive claim. We also had to concede that an award to the claim would be appropriate in the circumstances of the case. In January of this year, the full court declared that the constitutional right had been breached, both the right to a fair trial within a reasonable time and the right as to trial of the substantive claim. However, the court upheld our submission and ordered a retrial of the substantive matter. It nonetheless awarded damages in the sum of $1.725 million, including costs. And the retrial of the substantive matter is now set for July 2022. Madam Speaker, I will highlight the work of the motor vehicle accident backlog project that has been ongoing. The project has achieved most of the targets set in its first year of operation, and so it was extended for another year up to February of this year, and thereafter to a further period of 2 years up to February of 2023. It is served by 7 attorneys at law and a secretary. The extensions granted are to enable consolidation of the gains made in eliminating the backlog of accident matters, and as well as other matters in the General Legal Advice Division, and to strengthen the existing framework in treating and dealing with matters on a timely basis. Madam Speaker, despite the pandemic, a total of 306 new accident cases were placed before the project team. And that is while an existing 287 older matters were reassigned to them. There are approximately 1,200 continuing matters going back from 2014 and up to 2019, for which the team has conduct. The majority of the files relate to accidents involving the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Madam Speaker, the printed presentation sets out a summary of the files settled and closed between February 2020 and March 31, 2021. A total of 196 cases were disposed of. Between January 2020 and March 31, 306 new matters were assigned to the team, and the report also has a table setting out the breakdown of those matters. For the period, Madam Speaker, a total of 198 instruction files were returned, mainly to the Jamaica Constabulary Force, after closure of relevant matters, and a breakdown of the cases on a month-by-month basis is set out in the printed presentation. Between February 1 and March 31, 2020 to 2021, the project team successfully negotiated and settled matters which saw payments being made by the Ministry of Justice amounting to just over $12 million. And the presentation also sets out a breakdown of those matters in tabular form. Several demand letters were sent to the individuals and insurance companies related to compensation for damage done to government vehicles for which they are liable. And last year I indicated that it was the first time the government had really embarked on such an exercise. The sum of $88,000 was recovered during the reporting period. Insurance companies have, however, been dilatory in responding to the request for compensation, and as a result, it has been proposed that litigation be pursued to recover compensation, and so far we have a total of just over $6.6 million to claim. The presentation again sets out in details the individuals, including the insurance companies, and the amounts that the claims are being made against. Madam Speaker, I want to put on my record my sincere appreciation to Mrs. Angela Cousins-Robinson, project consultant, and the team leader and team members for their efficient work. The project has been a resounding success. In relation to the Commercial Affairs Division, the division has a staff complement of 4 attorneys and 1 secretary, and that is woefully insufficient to allow for timely review of the complex commercial matters we deal with on behalf of the Government of Jamaica. Thankfully, though, Madam Speaker, the division is supported by the Commercial Task Force comprising 3 legal consultants and 1 administrative assistant. And this is made possible through the extension of the Foundations for Competitiveness and Growth project, funded by the World Bank and implemented by the Planning Institute of Jamaica in collaboration with the Jamaica Promotions Corporation, JAMPRO, and the Development Bank of Jamaica, the DBJ. Madam Speaker, I continue to express my gratitude to the consultants for their mentorship and knowledge transfer to the team. The written presentation highlights a number of the significant work that we have done over the reporting period. Suffice it to say, Madam Speaker, that the advice we provide on the several legal matters enable the ministers to announce their projects. And Madam Speaker, the work in the Commercial Affairs Division is usually complex and lengthy, and you'd have to see to understand how we struggle because of the paucity of resources to get the work done. And I verily believe that other parts of government may be penny-wise and pound foolish in how the resources are allocated. But I'm heartened that my cries have not fallen on deaf ears. The Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Justice have been good allies, and I know work is underway to beef up the department. I think every time the rest of government has to wait, or they hear that a matter is stuck in the chambers, they have a new appreciation for the urgency with which the issues in the chambers need to be addressed. We don't have the matters lingering just because. In fact, oftentimes they linger in other parts of government, and the minute they get to the chambers, the expectations is that we must just turn them over without going through them. I turn to the Commercial and Legislative Affairs Division. You know, Madam Speaker, there is so much complaint in the public domain about the slow pace of legislation, and I think every minister has shared their woes and their concerns. Now, not all of the work is done in the chambers, but for the part that we do, let me tell you, we have 2 full-time attorneys in that division and 1 part-time consultant, 1 secretary, and then I'm the other person added to it. And so, Madam Speaker, with the 2 full-time attorneys during the reporting period and up to now, the complement was reduced by 50%. So we only have 1 now. Just imagine, just imagine. But you know, I have to thank the little team, because many times we literally work through the night. They say the heights of great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, toiled upward through the night. That is the team at the chambers. We would highlight and have printed in the program the major pieces of legislation over the reporting period, including the Microcredit Act, which was just a lot of work. Minister Clark spoke at length and we passed it in the House. Then there was the Dog Liabilities for Attack Act, smaller one. Then we had the Independent Fiscal Commission Act. Minister Clark spoke, a lot of work we did on it. And on top of that, for the COVID period, Madam Speaker, the division has also worked tirelessly to ensure that the orders are out accurately on time after discussions in the House, and also opine and other related matters. I turn to the Legal Advice Division. It has a staff complement of 4 attorneys and 2 secretaries, and it is in this division that we provide advice on a wide array of matters to all of government. Matters in the area of personal injury, negligence, false imprisonment, malicious prosecution, assault and battery, detenue and seizure, employment termination, pensions, and other retiring benefits. What we have been doing in order to address the injustices that we see through the matters in this division, we continue to streamline and fast-track the processing of files. We have finalized some guidelines for approval for the executive team to approve. There is now in place a checklist on deaths and survivors' benefits under the Pensions Public Service Act of 2017, as well as under the Defence Act. And efforts are being made to address the backlog and to address in a timely manner those matters relating to pension, benefits generally, and benefits for relevant beneficiaries of deceased members of the security forces. Madam Speaker, I can only repeat just how inadequate the staff is and just how greater the work is, and yet we try to keep the wheels turning and advise the government. The last division that I will report on the legal side, is the International Affairs Division. I use the opportunity to publicly welcome our newest Deputy Solicitor General, Ms. Michelle Walker, who joined the AGC team as head of the International Affairs Division. She's a very experienced and seasoned international lawyer who, in just over 8 months, has already started to make a positive mark on the work in the division and on the work of the chambers as a whole. So, Madam Speaker, the advice to government on matters concerning international law is provided through this division. The work covers a diverse range of areas, including the Caribbean community and the CARIFORUM matters, international human rights, law of the sea and maritime delimitation, aviation law and policy, international environmental law, and matters concerning international security, including mutual legal assistance, drug trafficking, human trafficking, anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism measures, and counter-proliferation measures. The divisional team of 5 attorneys and 1 secretary also represents the government in the negotiation and drafting of bilateral and multilateral treaties and agreements. We provide advice on the government's obligation under these instruments and its domestic implementation of the obligations. We also prepare reports to the international bodies on compliance and progress in implementing conventions and resolutions. At the CARICOM level, Madam Speaker, the team provides me with much support in the work that I do on the Legal Affairs Committee of the CARICOM, which is the organ that provides advice on international legal issues and the harmonization of laws in the community. With a move to the online platform, the division has been called upon to participate in meetings at odd hours across the time zone. And you know, Madam Speaker, I don't think many understand that we literally work through the night on these matters. During the year in review, the division advised on the signature of the CARIFORUM UK Economic Partnership Agreement, which the Minister of Foreign Affairs would have spoken about. We advised on the Doha implementation to the Kyoto Protocol. We also advised on the drafting of Jamaica's national report to the UN Human Rights Council for the Universal Periodic Review third cycle regarding the implementation of the country's international human rights obligations. We participated in the review process and contributed to the preparation of Jamaica's response to the recommendation coming out of the review. We also continue to respond to petitions submitted to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. We coordinated the preparation of the country's progress report for the period March 12, 2020 to February 19, 2021, under the mechanism for follow-up under the Inter-American Convention Against Corruption, the Mississippi framework, for which I serve as lead expert. The report was presented by the Learned Solicitor General at the Mississippi 35th meeting of experts held between March 8 to 11 of this year. Madam Speaker, the printed report of the presentation highlights some other aspects of the work. Just to say quickly in passing that in the area of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing measures, we provide support to inform Jamaica's third enhanced follow-up report by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, the CFATF. The report was analyzed. The report analyzed Jamaica's progress in improving technical compliance and implementing new requirements related to the Financial Action Task Force recommendations. And there is now some urgent matters to address, which the Minister of Finance at some point will speak about. Madam Speaker, I so thank the International Affairs Division, with whom I work very closely. And I just want to say that I am also engaged in discussion on reparation with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, and the Member of Parliament from Central Manchester, Mr. Mike Henry. And some exciting things will happen in that regard. Clarendon, thank you. Yes, Clarendon. Madam Speaker, the last area to report on before my concluding remarks is the Human Resource Management and Administration Division. Very, very important aspect of the work. This division facilitates the work of the legal divisions by providing service in strategic planning, finance and budgeting, human resource management, information communication technology, record and information management and services. This small but dedicated HR team comprises 2 plus 1, which is really a hub. And I thank them for undertaking their tasks and trying to meet the concerns of staff at all times of day and night with little or no complaint. We have strengthened the human resource capacity. We have put in place flexi-work arrangements. We have, in conjunction with the centralization project, put in place a registry file count. We've started a registry file count exercise from June 2020. We have moved to digitization of the records, Madam Speaker. Insofar as the library is concerned, we're currently engaged in a project to update its database and to add new categories for proclamations, rules and regulations, extraordinary gazettes and judgments from the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal. So far, 773 gazettes and 140 judgments have been added. We are looking to establish an integrated library management system and improve the office management Madam Speaker, I was really hoping to finish. I'm almost 10 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the member, the Attorney General, be given another 10 minutes to complete her presentation. Thank you.
The question is that the AG be given an additional 10 minutes to complete. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Grateful, Madam Speaker. Grateful, Madam House Leader. The registry team, sometimes we underestimate the importance of the registry. The team at the Chambers comprises 4 persons. For the period April 2020 to March 2021, a total of 1,006 new files were opened. Breakdown, 90 in relation to the Commercial Affairs Division, 114 for the Constitutional and Legislative Affairs Division, 344 for General Legal Advice, 60 for International Affairs, and 398 for the Litigation Division. Between April, same period, 1/2020, and March 31st, 2021, as I said before, 398 cases were assigned to the Litigation Division, more than one per day, with an already average of over 200 per attorney, matters per attorney. The printed report sets out in tabular form the breakdown of the new matters on a month-by-month basis. Madam Speaker, I'm grateful that, improvements have come. So we are not where we have started. Progress has been made on the problems. It's just that the pace is so slow and the work is getting heavier and more complex. Citizens are more litigious, and so we can't amble a tortoise space in order to get what needs to be done, Madam Speaker. So here I come to concluding. And I conclude with a renewal of my commitment to the people, especially my constituents. As I said at the start, that I will continue my efforts to have the machinery of government realigned for better outcomes. I stopped talking about system being broken. Systems are aligned precisely for the outcomes you get, and only when you realign them will you get other outcomes. I maintain, Madam Speaker, that once you truly see the people, once you truly hear the people, and once you truly feel the people, you just have to do better by the people. And I'm proud to be part of a team that is so committed to doing better by the people. Increasingly, Madam Speaker, governments all over are hampered in delivering from a place of authority. Because you know what? People just don't believe that they can do so. And so increasingly, people are turning to anti-establishment. They're turning away from the grandiloquence of authority. Because generally, they do not believe and they do not see that that grandiloquence has been followed with positive actions. And so increasingly, they're turning to anti-establishment alternatives. They're turning to people that they can trust. Madam Speaker, the people of Jamaica gave the party led by Prime Minister Holness a resounding victory. And, we don't take it for granted. We must therefore leverage the people who have lived experiences about the issues being decided on. Because, Madam Speaker, the simple truth is that we're all in this thing together. I agonize, Madam Speaker, about a number of things. But we have mutual obligations to each other. I boldly believe that rights and entitlements only exist because of obligations. And sadly, the conversation is too heavily skewed, always away from obligations. Madam Speaker, we need to accelerate or move from a grievance and victim culture. That is to say, a culture which proclaims that we are this way because of what you did, to a culture which emphasizes and celebrates doing things which makes us better off. Habits that build trust are integral to integrity.
Yes.
Because integrity, Madam Speaker, is not just about the absence of corruption. I pray that we will find what it takes to do what is right by the people. God bless all of us, and God bless Jamaica, land we love.
Madam Speaker, I really want to congratulate the Minister of Education and the Attorney General for the very rich presentations that they've made today. And at this point, I will ask for the debate to be suspended. Thank you.
The question before the House is that the sectoral debate be suspended until the next sitting of the House next week, Tuesday. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, at this time I ask for the recommittal of items, announcements, and notices of motions given orally.
The question before the House is that we have the recommittal of the item announcements. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. And also notices of motions given orally. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Also laid on the table of the House today is a copy of the Judiciary Salaries Orders, Order 2021 under the Judiciary Act, and the Independent Commission for the Judiciary Inquiry and Recommendations on the Adequacy of Salaries and Benefits for Judges for the year 2019-2020.
Announcements? Notices given orally?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. Be it resolved that the Judiciary Salaries Order 2021 under the Judiciary Act, which was laid on the table of the House on the 28th day of April 2021, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I'll move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
So, we are now at public business.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question before the House is that the member be allowed to take the motion, notice of which he gave earlier. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for approval of the motion.
Ask for the motion to be approved. Those in favor? Those against? Motion approved.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns for Tuesday, May 4, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Madam Speaker, as I had indicated earlier, I wish to, on the motion for adjournment, to raise a matter of definite and urgent national importance. And Madam Speaker, just to confine the discussion, I took the liberty of just putting it out succinctly, so that the scope of the discussion can be properly defined, because it takes place in a broader context. And so,
just before you do the motion, we are going ahead with the motion, members, and I ask all of us on this motion to note that it is done under Standing Order 11 of the standing orders, and we'll abide by the rules as indicated in the standing orders. Go ahead then.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, whereas the Speaker at the commencement of the business of the House of 20th of April 2021 reported, inter alia, that the member for Westmoreland Central is proceeding on leave of absence from this Parliament. And whereas the matter of leave of absence of a member is provided for by Section 41, subsection 1C of the Jamaica Constitution, Order in Council 1962, and Standing Order 81. And whereas Standing Order 81 requires, and I quote, any member who is prevented from attending a meeting of the House shall acquaint the Speaker as early as possible of his inability to attend such notices to be in writing. And whereas the brief report by the Speaker has raised several urgent issues for the opposition, civil society, and the public at large concerning the statement by the Speaker, and considering that the matter surrounding the request for leave by the said member is itself of great public interest in need of clarification by the member, be it resolved that the Honourable Speaker, in the interest of full transparency and good governance, provides further and better particulars concerning the following. 1. As the Speaker granted the request for leave of absence by the Westmoreland Central Member of Parliament. 2. If yes, could the Speaker disclose the reason or reasons or the basis for the grant of a leave of absence, and say whether the request from said member for leave was in writing? If the answer to 1 is yes, what are the terms and conditions attaching to said leave of absence? 4. Specifically, is the member being compensated? Specifically, is the member being compensated while on leave from this House? And 5th, what is the duration of the leave granted? And further, be it further resolved that the written correspondence relating to said leave of absence, if any, be provided to the opposition or otherwise made public. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I wish to speak in silence. Members,
please allow the Leader of Opposition Business to speak. I'll respond.
Madam Speaker, let me first make a few points in support of the points. Let me make a few points in support of the discussion set forward. First of all, Madam Speaker, it is to be acknowledged and accepted that no member of the House have a right to a leave of absence. That is granted at the discretion of the leader and with certain provision of the Speaker and with certain provision of the Standing Order, in particular Standing Order 81, being followed and responded to.
You are, Members, please, the leader of the opposition has a right to rise on the notice of adjournment. You have brought the motion and you have asked some questions which I want to answer for you, and that is the way I think we ought to proceed.
Speaker,
your first question
Madam Speaker, please. Might I just...
If you, just a moment. I'm going to have Mr. Chuck and yourself speak immediately after, but I just want, as my own integrity as the speaker is here to answer to you. Just a moment. Yes, member, I have granted the request for the absence of the member from Westmoreland Central. That is it. In answer to your second question, you said, if yes, could the speaker disclose the reasons for grant of leave? No. I have read carefully Section 81, which is before me. I took the liberty of reading May's. And there is no standing order which requires the speaker to disclose, and I'm just going slowly, to anyone, whether someone sitting in this house or a member of the public, why the member has sought approval for leave. There's nothing in any of the standing orders. It is at the speaker's discretion, guided by Section 81, which speaks to absence for illness, for official business, or for emergency. I have no duty to disclose, but I do have a copy because I have nothing to hide. As with the several applications I get to this date, to this week, on a weekly basis of applications for absence from Parliament, his absence says, my absence is due to unforeseen circumstances and the fact that there are certain matters to which I am required to attend to as a matter of urgency. And I took the liberty of reading what urgency means, and it says something of utmost importance. I want to state very clearly that up until today, I have granted leave, I have approved the leave of absence to several members sitting on either side of this House. And he has asked for leave to begin from the 20th of April to the 21st of June, 2021. Allow me, and he has been open and clear with that. I have situations that come on my desk every week that says I am absent for reasons beyond my control, unavoidable reasons. And they are all approved as is, and there is no requirement. And when you read Erskine May's, it does not, and we derive under this Section 8, I think it's standing orders 88 of the Constitution, which says we get guidance from the UK and it says nowhere in either May's or in the standing orders am I required to do what I have just done. But I have done so because I have nothing to hide. He has, as is done on a daily basis by members, applied for leave, which he has granted. And you have asked if the member is compensated
Madam Speaker,
while on leave. Just a minute.
I beg you, please, Madam Speaker.
Joe, I'm going to allow you.
I don't think you should be responding to this.
I do not have an obligation to do. But this is a matter that is in the public space, and I want to make it abundantly clear that as a speaker, as this party, this parliament, none of us in here condones domestic violence. But we cannot, as a parliament, be led by jungle law. We have to abide. We have to abide by the laws. That's all I'm saying. Because I think we are, as a parliament, of one accord about domestic violence. And I have been very careful. And I know I don't have an obligation as a matter of procedure under here, but it is in the public space. And you have asked, and I have nothing to hide. And I want to go further to say that the question that says, is a member being compensated while on leave from the House? Now, I suspect, like all other members who are absent from the House, he probably is still being compensated. And might I remind this Parliament that we have had members, several, that have been charged, that have been sat here, that have been compensated, and we have gone on. I have nothing to hide because, like every member in this House, we do not support domestic violence. But I want to reiterate that as loud as the cries are, we have to, and I must, as I sit up here, abide by the laws that govern what we do in here. This is not a jungle, and I'm not encouraging jungle law.
Madam Speaker, it is in...
Madam.
No, sit down. Burnell respond. No, sit down. Burnell respond. Burnell respond. Don't sit down, Burnell.
I have given notice that I want to make a comment.
Please, you know, this matter is of national importance, and I know the nation watches us. Member, you have brought a motion, and I have the standing orders requires that I allow 3 persons to speak for 3 minutes each.
No, sit down, man. Sit down.
Madam Speaker.
Sit down. No, Madam Speaker.
You know, members, I am allowing the 2 hands that I saw come up there to speak. But the leader of opposition business does have a right, and I just want
afterwards, man. Afterwards.
I'm not allowing to speak, but I must hear what he has asked me
afterwards.
Is it a question?
Afterwards.
Madam
You're not making a speech.
That's a question. That's a question.
There's no point of order.
A question, members, please.
When you responded, when you started to respond, I yielded because I wanted to say something else.
I'll ask you to wait because you brought the motion, and I know turn to Member Charles.
Madam Speaker, you know, as lawmakers, we are entrusted with such enormous responsibility. And I listened carefully to the leader of opposition business, who is also counsel. And I must tell you, I have great concern. Madam Speaker, you responded, and I had attempted to stop you because you had no obligation under our standing order to respond. The questions as constructed are inflammatory and absent of all the effort you have made in this House to balance and indicate that this is an issue of national importance that should not be politicized. What is critical, Madam Speaker, is that we still are in a country which is a democracy founded on the adherence to the rule of law. All of us are subject to law, or even lawmakers. But at the same time, we ought not at any moment to think it is appropriate to deny due process to anyone, even lawmakers. Madam Speaker, I can only, since you have responded, indicate that I think the comments, the questions rather, were inflammatory, and that as structured, the motion does not do justice to the significant effort you have made to balance and indicate to this country the importance of this issue. And as men, we too, and I stand, Madam Speaker, to reiterate and reaffirm what you have said, that we denounce, as the government has at every chance denounced anything to do with domestic violence and all violence. But let us not politicize this important issue.
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker. Hold it there. Madam Speaker, may I say how very disappointed I am that this motion could be brought to this House. And I would say, Madam Speaker, with due respect to you, if I was sitting there, I would indicate to the member, your motion is rude and out of order. Madam Speaker, this motion is bringing the role of your office into disrepute. To ask a question of how the Speaker makes a ruling is not only unparliamentary, it is totally outrageous. Madam Speaker, every week, as you have indicated, there are members who ask for leave of absence. Why should any member here get up and ask you, why is any member of this House getting leave of absence? It is in your total discretion. Madam Speaker, I have asked for leave of absence. I have said it is on the basis of sickness. And members will say I walk a little badly because of a back surgery. But the truth is, I would hate to have to explain my sickness. And this is what is being asked, Madam Speaker, to explain why a member is asking for leave of absence. Madam Speaker, this is politicizing parliamentary proceedings. And I say, Madam Speaker, it is unfortunate because I have closed, Madam Speaker, by saying this motion is setting a bad precedent. And I ask that you withdraw it or we vote to dismiss it as being outrageous.
Members, I'm going to allow you. Members, members, allow me. Members, please. Please. Members. Members, I agree with you. I have read and I do recognize that as a speaker, I am under no obligation. But I am also acutely aware of the discussions taking place in the public space. And my response today is to send a clear message to Jamaica that what has taken place is in keeping with the provisions of the Constitution and with the provisions of our standing order. This Parliament has done nothing wrong. And I am going to use the opportunity because I've heard it in the public space and I'm not sure whether people are reading carefully. There are several utterances and written things to say, ask me why I reversed my decision. I did not, have not, and would not reverse a decision I made. So, for the records, please let Jamaica be clear that prior to the sitting on the 13th of April 2021, I had a discussion with a leader of opposition business before Parliament, in which, allow me to speak, please, who had said he wanted to bring a motion for the suspension of a member. He took the liberty of showing me the draft. When he did, it named a member of this House, and I told him I would not allow it because the naming of the member was incorrect for a number of reasons, which I won't go into now. Everybody knows. Despite our discussion on the 13th, he rose to read it, and I stopped. I said, no, I didn't allow it. So there is no motion, as people have said, that I have reversed. That was not brought to Parliament. On the 20th now, he brought a motion which was given to me. I read it. In that motion, no member was named, and there was no reference made to any member sitting in this House. On that basis, I had every reason to allow it, because as a Parliament, we are saying the same thing. So that I have not reversed my decision. There is one motion that came before this Parliament, which I allowed. It's in generic terms, and both sides of the aisle agree. And let Jamaica understand, everybody understands, that everybody sitting in this House speaks with one accord. We denounce domestic violence. But we are a Parliament, we are a court, and we must abide by the rules, and due process must take place. And that is what we intend to do. I must re-emphasize, we cannot operate by jungle law. We must abide by the rules. Thank you. Mr. Leader of Opposition Business wanted to close, and I'll allow him. Just allow him. Beg your pardon? Yes. Not Leader of Opposition Business. The Leader of Opposition Business. I didn't see your hand.
I'm rising. I just want to say something quickly on this motion.
As quickly as you can.
Absolutely.
There are 3 minutes that is allowed for
yes,
three, and we have had three
I'll
speakers.
be as short as the rules allow. Madam Speaker, first of all, I want to thank you for having decided to explain your position. I join issue with the notion that because the rules don't require you to explain something, you should not explain it. The truth is that this is completely unique. The situation is not like the run-of-the-mill request where somebody has to travel abroad or whatever, and they're seeking to meet a day. The circumstances in which this particular matter has arisen. I don't know why all these howls are necessary. Just calm down. I will calm down. Calm down, please. Your behavior is quite unnecessary. The circumstances in which this particular matter arose were circumstances the whole country is aware of, and very strong feelings exist around it. And the request that was made for an explanation as to why a leave of absence was granted in this instance, given that Standing Order 81 provides a legal framework within which you operate in exercising your discretion, was not improper. You weren't forced to give the explanation, but you chose to do so, quite rightly in my opinion. So I want to say that I do not accept what the member from Southeast Clarendon or the member from Northeast St. Andrew has said on that matter. You have acted absolutely properly in responding to the request for that information. The other point I would make, Madam Speaker, is this. Persons do not have a right. They have to seek leave. They don't have a right to be absent. They have to seek leave. And the reason, and you've granted, I think, around 2 months leave to the individual. That suggests that the standing orders contemplate that there's something preventing somebody from coming here. They are paid to come here. We are all paid to represent our constituencies here and to attend meetings of this House. Invariably, there can be things, exigencies that stop or prevent us coming on a particular occasion or for a short period of time or whatever. That is the normal thing in life, and we apply to you for leave, and you invariably would grant it. These circumstances...
It's always granted by all speakers.
Fair enough. I'm not aware of any situation in which I can't refute what you've said. I did say invariably. So the point really is, in this instance, because of the wider circumstances around the matter, and they say it shouldn't be politicized, but it has been highly politicized. A person has been removed from the caucus of the governing party. The person has been removed of any positions they may hold within their party. So it is totally disingenuous and absolutely absurd to pretend that this is not a matter which is highly politicized. I must tell you, ma'am, that from where I stand, the whole question of this leave of absence is still one over which there is a cloud. But I accept that it is your discretion in the matter, and that you have applied the standing orders, I believe, in the way that you think is right. And I just want to commend you again for having had the perspicacity and wisdom of coming here in response to this motion and saying why what took place has taken place. The public wanted to know, and you were absolutely right to do it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I just want to add one thing that I omitted to say. When the question was asked about subsistence, the standing orders is clear. The only time that subsistence is denied is if the member who seeks leave does not inform the speaker within good time. That is what this, so that the subsistence is in keeping with the standing orders.
Madam Speaker, I rise on a sad note.
Yes, thank you.
I ask the House to note the passing of Ambassador Anthony Johnson, former government minister, former member of Parliament for North East St. Catherine, former Jamaican High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. We regret his passing, Madam Speaker, and we wish to express our condolences to his widow, to his daughter, the Honorable Kamina Johnson Smith, and the rest of the family, and to ask, Madam Speaker, that next week we take time out to pay tribute to this great Jamaican.
I too join with the leader of government business this afternoon in expressing my condolence to the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Kamina Johnson, and to her mother, Senator Johnson's wife, and the rest of his family, our sympathy, and ask that God's love will be with them in this very difficult period. It doesn't matter how much we expect death. When it comes, it doesn't make it any easier. So we ask for God's love to be with them as they go through this difficult period.
Madam Speaker, in rising, let me join the leader of government business in paying tribute to and acknowledging the passing of one who has served among us and someone who has given stellar service to this country. And just to say, Madam Speaker, I look forward to the tribute when it comes, because Anthony Johnson is someone I knew very well, and someone I had a very good relationship with. And so my condolences to the wife and to his daughter and his close friend. So look forward to it. Madam Speaker, in closing, let me just make this remark. The House has won this afternoon. The House of Parliament has won here this afternoon, consequent of your ruling, of your decision, consequent on your decision to answer the question over which, as I acknowledged before, you had no strict obligation to do. So I can say to you, Madam Speaker, as I've said and I've written elsewhere, in all of this, the House has come under a cloud of suspicion in all of this. And among the things we must do, is to act in a way as a house so that we can lift this veil of suspicion from this house. And I think your ruling and your response this afternoon goes a far way in addressing that issue. And I too want to commend you for the wisdom and your decision to respond in the way you have. But I said to you this afternoon that the Jamaican people are expecting us to lift the bar, to raise the bar on this matter and on every other matter. And I think so, Madam Speaker, I end.
Members, please.
Madam Speaker, we all have to learn that when something is wrong, to find false equivalence is not a good strategy. And we should deal with the matter at hand, set the standard, and move on. And I think you have begun to do that here today, and I commend you on that.
I want to thank you for those comments, but I want to indicate to Jamaica that I have not started to do that this evening. We have started before in lifting the bar. The first step in lifting the bar is to abide by the rules. We cannot go to jungle law. And this Parliament had already started lifting the bar by abiding the rules prior to what I've said this evening. But I'm confident that we speak as one accord, and due process and the law will run its course, and Jamaica can be assured they are in good hands, because this Parliament, this government, and this Speaker will never condone domestic violence or any violence of any sort. Thank you. The question before the House is that we had the question before the motion on adjournment that the House do adjourn until next week, Tuesday, the 4th of May. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.